welcome to the show, the James Whale Radio Show. We have a special tonight. It's not often that you get to meet a legend in the flesh, a man whose books have sold over 60 million copies worldwide and been translated into 30 languages, a man who's described as being the world's most successful non-fiction writer. And it's a great pleasure to welcome to the studio one of the world's leading extraterrestrial experts, Erick Von Däniken. Erick, welcome to the show.
Welcome to everybody.
And your new book out, we're going to give away copies of your new book as well, which is called The Gods Were Astronauts, which we'll talk about in a moment. If you want a chance of winning, I've got 10 copies of Erick's new book to give away. All you need to do is text the word books to 8998 and your answer to this question: what does UFO stand for? All right? Text the word books with your answer to the question, what does UFO stand for, to 8998, and we'll pick 10 out, and I'll tell you tomorrow who were the lucky winners. Erick, I'm amazed that it was in the 60s that you wrote Chariots of the Gods. For some reason, I thought it wasn't that long ago.
God, I finished the book in 1966, but first I did not find a publisher. So it took 2 years that the book was published in Germany, Switzerland, Austria. That was in the spring of 1968.
Yeah.
And in 1969, it was translated to the English market.
I remember reading it in the bath.
In the bath?
In the bath at school. Well, while I was at school at home, I was in the bath, and I got this book, and I was reading it, and I just couldn't put it down. It was the first time I read a book like that I couldn't put down. And it's everything you seem to say. Of course, why didn't anybody else think of this? Of course, this must have been what happened. And then I got on with my life and did other things, and I heard a story somewhere. I wasn't really involved at the time. Erick Von Däniken made up some of the evidence, and then you became, for a while, persona non grata, really.
Of course.
Why?
I never made up some of the evidences, absolutely not. And some of the critics simply overlooked the question marks. In Chariots of the Gods, I had 238 question marks. So it was a book full of questions. Of course, it was very provocative. Of course, I made mistakes in Chariots of the Gods. Of course, I mean, after more than 30 years, I would not write Chariots of the Gods in the same way. When you are young, you are not self-critical enough. You believe every rubbish. And you just believe that you are powerful and you want to have right. In the meantime, I'm a 67-year-old man, and of course, you write in a different way. I was attacked, sometimes for good reasons, and sometimes my critics were quite right, sometimes not. That's another story. Mm-hmm. And it was always my mind, just become better. Do not repeat the old thoughts.
Do you still, though, hold dear the main premise, though, that basically humankind originated on this planet by some sort of intervention from extraterrestrial beings?
Well, thousands of years ago, I don't know when it was, an extraterrestrial spaceship surrounded this planet. Out of the spaceship, smaller vehicles have come down. Now, our ancestors at that time were still in a position of Stone Age people. Seen from a technical point of view, they were primitives. So they could not understand what was going on, and they believed that these extraterrestrials are the gods. Of course, we know there are no such thing as gods, but that's what our ancestor believes. And the second part, I really have good reasons to believe that we are not only from this planet. Of course we have an evolution on this planet. Of course we have our anthropological knowledge. Of course I do not doubt that we came from the family tree of apes. We have the bones and the skeletons and all this. All that is true. But on the other hand, every old tradition, including the Bible, says that the gods, in plural, created man according to their own image. And I do not think that there is a contradiction between evolution and these old texts. Both sides are right. Just imagine 10,000 years ago, maybe more, a spaceship arrived. This was not a coincidence. They knew from a faraway distance that we have life on this planet. So they found billions of forms of life on Earth. They took one exemplary of the most advanced form, which was one of our forefathers, a primitive being, some Neanderthal man. They took just one cell from him. They changed the cell, the DNA in the cell, which the genetics are doing every day today. They just don't tell it to us. Now the cell is put into a liquid of nutrition. The cell grows and is then implanted in the womb of a female of the same species. This female will give birth to a child. Of course, the child has the skeleton, the bone, the evolution of the family tribe of apes. But this child has something in plus what the rest of the family tree has not. For example, the possibility to speak, to change out information, to create cultures and so on. Soon as you want to have a new tribe out of the family tree, you need at least two, female and male. And here you land in the legend of Adam and Eve. The gods created man according or after their own image, which does not contradict evolution, neither the Darwinism. You can have both. So that's the idea.
Why? The religious people around the world gave you a very, very hard time. I mean, you were described as blasphemous. I even read an article where you were described as the Antichrist. Did this ever get to you? Did you ever feel upset about it, or?
Of course, especially when I was younger. In the meantime, not anymore. And in the meantime, I must say the critics have become very fair. The situation has changed because Erick Von Däniken has changed too, of course. But in the beginning, it was very hard sometimes. For example, in the United States and here in England, my first book had the title Chariots of the Gods. And just about one and a half year later, a contra book appeared on the market called Crash to the Chariots. And there I was crashed down really completely. I was called a charlatan and whatever you wish. And some of the press said, no, finally, we found a professor in archaeology who debunks this Mr. Von Däniken. And as it happened, many years later, I met on a TV show in Australia the so-called professor in archaeology. We had a glass of wine together, and I said, what are you doing professionally? He said, well, I'm a minister. So often I was attacked on the false premises. But in the meantime, this is all clarified.
The new book, The Gods Were Astronauts, goes back, it really talks about the fact, looks at the Old Testament, really, and goes through the Bible fairly systematically, as you did before, but comes to some slightly different conclusions. You also, some amazing pictures in your book of some of the places you've traveled to, some of the photographs you've taken, which you hold up as evidence. Why do you think it's still... It doesn't seem that your theory still doesn't seem to be accepted or want to be investigated by people who I think should be looking into it more deeply. Because if we knew definitely and we investigated that these were our beginnings, it would be good for all of us to know definitely.
Of course. Well, on this planet we have what we call in German language Zeitgeist. There is no word, I would say, spirit of time. We have our spirit of time now, which means everybody who is somebody wants to be or has to be in the society serious. A journalist has to be serious. A chief editor has to be serious. What means to be serious? Means, well, to say and to write what the normal people believe is correct. Soon as you come up with some fantasies or fancy stories or you attack religion, you are not serious anymore. So some of the people who don't care about my ideas, some of the scientists, I fully understand them. They don't want to lose their seriosity. It's their goodwill. I mean, they do not take me for serious. On the other hand, I don't take them for serious either.
Tell me about one of the... I mean, there are many things in there. I'm interested in this. I was talking about the miracle of Fatima not long ago, but you actually, this is the Portuguese miracle of Fatima that you describe what you think happened in your book. Just share that with us now.
Well, that's a long story.
Abbreviated.
I hope my English is fair enough to express this. Well, in Fatima, it was in the year, I say, 1917, if I'm correct. 3 children had visions of the Holy Mary. Now, Elsewhere in the world, children also had visions of the Holy Mary. But Fatima was different because the Holy Mary said to the 3 children that every month at the same time, on the same place, they will appear. She will appear again. So that happens every month. It happened in May, in June, in July, and so on. And on September 13th, the Virgin Mary, Holy Mary, said to the children, in 1 month, they would see a wonder, a miracle. So who wonders that in October 1917, 80,000 people were out in the fields because they all expected the wonder. It was a rainy day. It was absolutely covered with clouds. You see the pictures in black and white from that time, that the people are standing in the field with umbrellas and so on. And of a sudden, a miracle really took place, exactly in the time predicted by the Holy Mary. There was a miracle which is called the sun miracle. Of a sudden, the sun, like a disc, appeared on the sky, came closer to the people, changed its color, in every color, from the rainbow. And this whole miracle happened for about 8 minutes. So you had time enough to observe the miracle. Then the sun went back, and the clouds closed again, and it continued to rain. So this is something not understandable because it was predicted before. And if you say, well, just the children, maybe in their brain by a telepathic meaning or so, they have some visions. No, in that time, in that case, 80,000 people saw the miracle. So what was it? Now you have to go into history, and that's really the long story I cannot tell here. Who is the Holy Mary? How came that the Catholic Church has a Holy Mary? That's a story in history. And to my belief, something like a Holy Mary in reality should not exist. Should not, but obviously does. Mm-hmm. Because
so many people have seen it.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And you have this visions and traditions. So we really have a contradiction. According to history, there is no such thing as a Holy Mary. But in reality, we have it. And my idea is maybe we had an extraterrestrial demonstration in 1917. Some extraterrestrial observed a small group of children. They, maybe by a telepathic meaning, they showed them some images, and then they made the miracle in an artificial way. So these extraterrestrials realized that that humanity in that year, 1970, will not understand extraterrestrials. There are no global communications at that time. So they said to the oldest of the girls, here you have a message. Give this message, a secret message, give this message to the highest on this planet, and he should open it to the public in 1960. So many years later, in 1960, the Pope in Rome opened the secret, and he decided not to go on public with it. Why not? I mean, for the Catholic Church, the Virgin, the Holy Mary, is the mother of Jesus, and is into heaven with her body. So to say, she's the highest godness in a way. Now this highest godness orders her highest priest on earth, the Pope, to open the secret in 1960. He reads the secret and he does not open it. He does not go to public. Why not?
Has it ever been publicized? What was in it?
2 years ago, the Vatican published a paper which they said that this was the third secret of Fatima. But I analyzed it in my new books, The Gods Were Astronauts, and definitely this was a lie from the Vatican. This was not the true story coming out.
Okay. We're going to take a break. If you'd like to talk to Erick Von Däniken, call us now, 08704 2020, the usual number, 08704 2020. We've got 10 copies of Erick's new book, The Gods Were Astronauts, published by Chrysalis Books, to give away. All you've got to do to win one is text the word books, followed by your answer to the question, what does UFO stand for, to 8998. That's 8998. Erick, just before we start taking the calls, let's start at the end, if you don't mind. I talk to people who come on, religious people and everything else, and they all have... every major religion talks about the time when gods will return. They're always going to come back, chariots of fire in the Bible, various other things. And Do you think that these beings left these messages with these early people, and that's why they're in all the religious books? They all seem to say the same thing.
Exactly. This is perfectly said. Every tribe in antiquity, be it the Maya in Central America, be it the Aztecs, be it the Incas in South America, be it some African tribes, it doesn't matter. I know what I'm talking about. Every tribe in antiquity had this expectation that somebody will return in a faraway future. But not only in the past, also in our days' religions. I mean, I'm educated as a Christian, and we Christians are waiting the recoming of Jesus Christ. The Muslim society is waiting for the recoming of their Mahdi, or the Jewish society, which is older in religion than the others, are still expecting the returning of their Messiah. Now, obviously, not every religion can have right. Some of them must be wrong, no doubt. And I would say they are all wrong. Thousands of years ago, some extraterrestrials, before they left, they made the promise, we will return someday. It might be that one of the humans asked them, when will you return? Now, the extraterrestrial didn't know the answer, because you have to deal with light years, long distance. They could not say exactly when they will return, but they promised in a faraway future we will return. Do not forget it. And this has entered into the religions as the recoming of some gods. And maybe now someone is observing us. What do I know? Somebody is maybe studying our languages or our bacteria or our weapon or political systems or religious systems. And maybe one day they show up and say, hello, friends, here we are.
Do you think in those early days, the times of the Mayans, the Incas, some of these other early civilizations, that they were aware of people living with them who were more advanced, these alien beings? Do you think they passed themselves off as gods?
Well, in Indian mythology, in the Sanskrit text, it is described that long time ago, gigantic cities surrounded the earth in the firmament, not in the heaven, in the firmament. And out of these cities, smaller vehicles have come down. The Indians called them the Vimanas. And in some cases, these Vimanas took some of our humans up to their cities around the earth. We would say today in the mother spaceship. They teach them. And some of these people have returned to Earth, and they left their descriptions. So we know of gigantic cities, really. And these people who were there, they never said that these are gods. They knew it's higher beings, higher technology, a technology which we can never understand, at least not at that time. So they did not call them gods. But the normal people, later in traditions, which could not understand extraterrestrials, they said, the gods were here, the gods from the clouds, with smoke, fire, smoke, thunder, loud noise, they descended to earth. Of course, some gods do not exist at all. By the way, by thinking in such a way as I do, you never lose a real God. I have never become an atheist. I am one of these few persons who still pray every day. Let's say I'm right with my ideas. Okay, we were visited. So the next question should be, well, where did they come from? Now you can go on and say they were visited by another solar system, influenced by another solar system. Okay, and the others. You can play back the game, if you wish, for millions and thousands and billions of years.
So God, or this sort of, this whatever is in our soul, the being that's inside the fleshy bit, which maybe links the whole of the universe together. Could be something completely we just couldn't understand.
We don't understand. We have no definition of God.
Did Jesus Christ exist, do you think? I mean, well, we know the person Jesus Christ existed.
I mean, but he was not God.
No, but he did these. Obviously, there's something that he did that was unusual, but kept people talking about him for so many years. Do you think that he was one of these aliens?
No, not at all. You know, the Jesus story is about 2,000 years old. I'm talking about so-called gods, extraterrestrials, 5,000, 6,000 years in the past. So there's nothing together.
Okay. Let's take some calls. Do you want to put your headphones on, okay. Eric? Okay. Let's go to Kevin in Sunbury first, okay? Kevin, you're on the air through to Erick Von Däniken.
Hello, Mr. Van Däniken.
Hello, good evening.
This is the first time I've ever spoken to this to anyone, but, well, apart from a mate of mine, I've told him before, but I've really had an experience in the past, and I know that they exist, and because of that, I know religion means nothing to me. As all I can say is one night I woke in my bed in a spasm. And it felt in that spasm that I thought I was strangling myself in my sleep, and I had a feeling of being crushed. And in this sort of spell, I found out my hands were by my side and not around my throat. I was like in a frozen sort of state, a semi-conscious state.
And then you woke up. Yeah, I know. Okay. Neil in Hull.
Oh, hi there.
Yes, Neil.
Hi. I just was wondering, obviously, Mr. Däniken was saying he'd been sort of...
Get to the point, Neil.
Obviously, after he wrote his books, quite a few other people, Raymond Drake, Landsberg, Collins, Sharrow, and quite a few other people came out with books of similar things. Did that sort of keep him going in the dark days when the establishment were trying to sort of...
That's a good point, yeah.
Crash his dreams, crash his work?
Well, when the establishment were trying to sort of... And the establishment all over the world had a real go at you, Eric, didn't they?
Yeah.
Did all these other writers keep your spirits up at that time?
Of course. I mean, except in the English-speaking world, the rest of the world always published my books. There was never a leak. So far, I published 28 books, as you said in the beginning.
Yeah.
Only in the English language, I was missing for about 15 years because maybe of this attacks against Erick Von Däniken and the criticism and all this. For sometimes, no English-speaking publisher touched Erick Von Däniken. But the situation has changed. I mean, I always continued with my books, and I have always come up with better arguments, better indications. Never repeat the old mistakes.
After those early books, you're absolutely right, and I hadn't really thought about it, and until I interviewed you about 2 years ago, I think, about the planes. You had been missed. I mean, I thought you'd gone into retirement.
No, not at all. No, I would never do this. You know, I have a certain feeling like a missionary, but without any religious sects.
Okay.
I never want to have right or to be right. All I wish is come and look at the situation in the past, maybe with my eyes, and then make your own decision.
Okay. Neil, thank you for that.
Yeah, could I just ask, a bit of a long shot, I don't have a mobile phone or text. Was there any chance of winning a book at all?
I see. Maybe we'll do a writing one later.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Thanks a lot. And can I say thank you for letting me speak?
All right, Neil.
Thank you very much.
Bye. John in Swansea, you're on the air through to Erick Von Däniken.
Well, hi. This is a real privilege. I've grown up with Erick Von Däniken. I'm involved leading a church in Swansea, and I became a Christian just the year before Chariots of the Gods was released. And for the first 2 years, when it was serialized in the Sun newspaper, I had it up to my eyeballs with people having a go at me. You believe the Bible? God was really an astronaut and all that sort of stuff, you know. So to actually be on the air talking to Erick Von Däniken is pretty good. But anyway, all I want to say is that they're great books to read, but when you actually read the way that Eric, and perhaps Eric might want to make a comment to me about this, the way that Eric actually handles the Bible, you really should be much more careful, really much more careful. The Bible, when you read the Bible properly, there's no way it would support.
Yeah. Which Bible do you read, John? It's been changed so many times. I mean, which one do you read?
Well, I read, if you're talking about the Old Testament, if you compared the modern translations with the original, which we got from the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is before Jesus, you'd realise that it hasn't been changed. So if I could read Hebrew, I would do it in that, but I can only read English.
But Eric, now listen. Some people believe that the Bible, the Old Testament, is God's word.
I do.
Yes, but every scientist and every theologian knows that the Bible, the Old Testament, is in fact a composition of several texts, several people, written at several times, at different times.
I agree with that too.
In the Bible, for example, we have definitely stories which are plagiated from all the books. For example, in the Bible, we read the whole wonderful story of the Great Flood and Noah's Ark. But we know that that story is older. It comes from the Sumerian part. So there in the Sumerian part, we have the same story in the Gilgamesh epic, but handed down in the first person, while in the Bible it's written in the third person. So it cannot be the word of God, because somebody took it out from other texts. So
that argument it won't really stand, because when you read Genesis, all right, yes, there are the Epic of Gilgamesh and other things all across the world echo this whole idea of there being a worldwide flood. But just because Christians say that the Old Testament is the Word of God, doesn't mean to say it wasn't written by human beings and it wasn't compiled at different times in different places. The two don't contradict each other.
So what you're basically saying, John, if I can just make it, you're saying whoever wrote it and whatever, they were driven by God. So in that way, it's God's word.
The New Testament talks about the writers of old being driven along, being blown like a wind in the sails by the Holy Spirit, by God himself. And one of the amazing things about the Old Testament is that it makes so many predictions which come true. When Jesus actually died on the cross, he fulfilled a bundle of predictions.
Well,
where he was going to be buried.
John, this is wonderful to hear you preaching to us, and so many people do. But, you're just going on and on and on without accepting any sort of criticism at all.
Well, no, hey, the Christian world and Christians, including myself, probably deserve a bit of criticism now and then and keep our feet on the ground.
Well, listen, Eric, please, I'm taking over, you carry on.
Look, in my new book, The Gods Were Astronauts, again, I deal with the Old Testament, and I simply ask myself the question, is this God in the Old Testament a metaphysical being? Is it a spirit, or is it something material? And the God described in the Old Testament is definitely not metaphysical, because he comes down on the holy mountain with loud noise, thundering, sand is blowing out, the Israelites are afraid, they have to stand away, and so on. Or you read in the Old Testament the book of Ezekiel. It's by the end of the Old Testament. Ezekiel described the chariot of the gods. He describes the wheels, the noise, the metallic feet, and all these things. So this is materialistic. It's not spiritual. It's not metaphysical. So I came to the conclusion that the God described in the Old Testament is something which is not what I believe to be God. I am a deep believer in God, and my God has to have a few qualities. For example, God makes no mistake, or God has to be out of time. He's timeless. My God doesn't need to make experiences, and then he has to wait what the result is. He knows it in advance. My God, of course, is omnipotent, so it means he's all-present.
So why do you think, Eric, there was this need for not only the Christians, but the Muslims and the Hindus and all the other religions all need to have a book?
Every society has its history. And history is a story which grows up slowly and is compelled of different sources, as we have it in the Old Testament. Now, as far away the time was from these visits from outer space, people did not understand. They could not understand. They have the old descriptions. Somebody says that there was a being coming down from the cloud with loud noise and trembling and so on. So the generations later were not eyewitness. They asked, what was this? And they came to the idea it must have been God. They could not understand extraterrestrials. In the meantime, we are in a new millennium, and we
Sure.
see the things with different eyes.
John?
James, I think Eric's missed a really big point.
What was the big point he's missed then?
I've got to say it. He's saying that the Old Testament God isn't the God that he would want to worship or believe in. But if he believes in the God of Jesus, then you have to believe in the God of the Old Testament, because Jesus himself not only quoted the Old Testament,
You don't have
John. Believed in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and everything.
Okay, John, thank you very much indeed. It's almost, to me, it's almost as if these books, the same with the Muslim books, people have been brainwashed, believing, you can't change their minds. They believe, for some reason, it's as if they read these books, and maybe there's a sort of trigger in these books, Eric, that was left in there, and it kind of triggers people into blindly believing what's in these books, whatever.
And we have the same situation today. Today we have a cult which we call cargo cult. whenever a technological high society comes together with a technological lower society, the lower society does not understand their technology. And in so many cases, in the last centuries, so that's not far away, you can clearly prove that the lower society believe that the higher society must be some gods. Of course, they are not gods. That's all ridiculous. It's a misunderstanding. They do not understand technology. They do not understand an aircraft. But they see something coming out of the air with a loud noise and thundering and smoke and fire and so on. And they say, this must be God. Later they learn that it was all a mistake. It was not God. The same situation happened thousands of years ago. The ancestors saw some extraterrestrial spaceship. They could not understand what it was. They believe this must be gods. Later generations not either understood anything about these old writings. So a god was created which in reality was an extraterrestrial thousands of years ago.
Okay.
At least that's my personal meaning.
Erick Von Däniken is my guest. He's going to be here for another 20 minutes. If you want to join us, 08704 20 20 20. Erick Von Däniken is my guest. Just before we go back to the calls and talk some more, Erick's got a TV series in the pipeline, I think, coming along. I was just talking to him. There are 12 books of Erick Von Däniken's that have never been published in this country, which is a shame, because I would be... He says, and one of them which deals with the prophecies in the Old Testament pointing towards Jesus Christ, and you put forward all the theories, which we don't have time to go into now, but I hope some of these books actually do come out in this country. It'll be interesting to read. And you also, at the moment, in Switzerland, which is where you are from, and so for some reason I thought he was Russian, but anyway, I don't know, I've lived for most of my life under the illusion that Erick Von Däniken was Russian, but there we are, I have no idea why. At the moment you're working on a Mysteries of the World theme park in Switzerland.
That's correct. I live in the mountain in Interlaken, which is about 40 kilometers from the capital of Switzerland, Bern. Mm-hmm. And there in Interlaken, a very big construction place is under construction at the moment. It's called the Mystery Park. It's a theme park. Now, what is the Mystery Park? It's not a fun park with some ghost rides and all these kinds of things. The Mystery Park has several pavilions. And in these pavilions, you see great mysteries of the world which do exist. For example, the plain of Nazca. We were talking about Nazca. Yeah. Nazca is a plain in Peru. It's a desert. When you are on the ground, you see nothing, just the usual desert. Soon as you go with the aircraft a little higher on the desert, of a sudden figures appear which were not there before, like fishes, monkeys, spiders, and so on. Then you climb higher with the aircraft. Then you see something, it looks like airstrips. It's really gigantic. So all this you don't see from the ground. Now for the Mystery Park, we have filmed this desert of Nazca with helicopters and with two cameras. One camera was pointing to the front of it, and the second camera directly on the bottom. In the Mystery Park, the visitors are sitting before a big screen, 20-meter screen, and this screen is going under your feet. It's a glass bottom projection, so you always have the impression of flying on a flying carpet. So then you have an earphone just on one ear, because on the other ear you have the music, and on your earphone you hear the scientific explanations, but very brief. One or two phrases.
So it's like actually being in an aircraft flying over.
Exactly, yeah. Okay. So you hear, for example, Miss Maria Reich has suggested it is an astronomical calendar, or Mr. Erick Von Däniken had the idea it has to do with extraterrestrials, or Mr. Heumer von Dietfurt suggested it's a religious cult. But every suggestion ends with a question mark. In the whole Mystery Park, you never receive any answer. By the end, you leave the show after 12.5 minutes, and you know that you have seen a real mystery on this planet, which does exist, and our scientific community has not more but some theories. And so many theories, to me, it's sometimes like in one of these luxury restaurants. You have everything on the bill and nothing on the plate. So the Mystery Park shows the wonders of the world.
When's it open?
But it opens on the 25th of May. And may I say this, if you want to see more about the Mystery Park, just go on my own homepage. It's www.daniken.com.
Daniken. Daniken.
There you have a link to the Mystery Park. On the Mystery Park we have cameras. You can see what's going on.
Okay, so there are going to be a number of these pavilions set into a mountainside, which you will be able to go and find out more about some of these amazing mysteries in the world, and you can probably find something to eat there and buy a few...
Of course, look, there are 7 main pavilions.
Yeah.
But in every pavilion you have a main show, and then you have side attractions. And the side attractions change all the time. If you visit the park 3 years later, you see different mysteries.
How long have you been working on this? Is it your own... This is your own baby, is it?
Yes, it's my own. I'm the vice president or the vice chairman of the board. And I'm responsible for the texts and for the content, what is inside.
Will you be doing anything on pyramids in there and stuff like that? And hieroglyphics?
Absolutely. You will be amazed. We have sent a film team to Egypt. They have filmed the pyramid from inside, outside, every detail. At the same time, since 6 years, we have 6 computer animators working for Mystery Park. The question comes up, how was the pyramid built? Now, 4,500 years ago, there was no camera there, so we need the computer animation to show the pictures. This looks very, very live to the viewer.
Have you changed your mind on how and what the pyramids were for? Because I remember... No?
No. I'm sure in the pyramid we still have several rooms, chambers, and in some chambers we will find some books, very, very old books, which tell stories about the Great Flood or before the Great Flood. This is not my invention. You read this within Arabian historians.
Okay. Let's take some more calls. Billy is on the M40. Hi, Billy. You're on the air through to Erick Von Däniken.
Hi, James. How's it doing?
Yeah, good, Billy.
I'd love to know what your guest thinks on the what happened on Bird Island.
On Bird Island?
Yeah.
What's Bird Island? Not with you, Billy.
Well, Bird Island was the island that's got, it's pretty much like Stonehenge, got a load of rocks and what have you, weighs incredible weight, put in certain parts of the island.
Where is this island, Billy?
Well, I read it in the book.
Which book?
Was God an Astronaut?
Yeah. Was God an Astronaut? Who wrote, that wasn't one of your books, was it? Was God an Astronaut?
No, I never. I don't know something about Bird Island.
No, we don't know that, Billy. I'm sorry, mate. You've stumped us. Ron in Belfast. Hi, Ron.
Hi, James.
You're on the air.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Däniken.
Good evening, Ron.
It's such an honour to talk to you. I wanted to know what you thought about the Nephilim that's mentioned in Chapter 6. Do you think they were a negative extraterrestrial race that tried to change your DNA again?
Of course they did. As I said before, we are the product of evolution, and at the same time, we are the product of an artificial mutation. And the Nephilim, this idea comes from Zachariah Sitchin, one of my good friends, in his books. This idea comes from him. And I absolutely agree in this regard with Zachariah.
Yeah, and I was also wondering, do you think that maybe the old God, the sort of God in the Old Testament, Jehovah, was actually a positive extraterrestrial, and he tried to influence the writers of the Bible to tell them about the extraterrestrials, only the people of the earth got it mixed up?
I didn't get the point because of the language.
Yeah, okay. I think basically what you're saying, Ron, is this: do you think that, who was it, Ron?
The Jehovah of the Old Testament.
The Jehovah of the Old Testament was actually a positive force and was trying to tell the people who were writing the Bible at the time, but they mixed it up.
Okay, they mixed it up. Yes, Jehovah is a positive force, but also Jehovah, or the God of the Old Testament, which is the same, he was, for example, destroying an experiment of humans which went into the wrong direction. Just see the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. That was the same Jehovah who did it. Or the God in the Old Testament created the earth and the plants and the flowers, and as the crown of creation, he created the man. And in the Old Testament you read, and God saw it was good. Of course it was good if God made it. But later on, the same God found out that it was not good, and he decided to kill mankind again by the Great Flood. So we have certain contradictions with that figure of God in the Old Testament.
Okay, Ron, thank you very much indeed. Sorry, we've got to move on because there's not much time left on loads of calls. Gordon in Portsmouth. Hi, Gordon.
Good evening, James. I'd like to talk to Mr. Däniken.
Yes, I'm listening.
Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Däniken. A pleasure to talk to you. When at the beginning of the programme, you said you was wrong in a couple of items in your books and you made mistakes. What were they exactly? Because I'm a great reader of yours.
Well, in the Old Testament, we have many mistakes. As I said before, the whole story of Noah's Ark is older than the Bible. It comes from Sumerian sources.
That's right, yeah.
But in the Bible, you find the same story handed down in the third person, while the original in the Gilgamesh epic, you read in the first person. And other stories, for example, we know today that the Ezekiel story in the great, in the Old Testament, is only partly from Ezekiel. The other part was written long time before Ezekiel.
Oh, I see, yep.
So many of these things are very controversial. In the Old Testament, for example, before the God of the Old Testament gives Moses the Ten Commandments, he commands that Moses should construct a gate around the holy mountain so that the people would not come close by, because the people would be destroyed if they came close by. And later the Lord descends on the mountains with smoke, fire, loud noise, thundering, and so on.
Yep.
So my God, and I am a believer in God, as I said, my God does not need a fence to have built before, and he does not descend with smoke, fire, loud noise, trembling, because he's a spiritual God, a metaphysic figure. So all these contradictions are part of my new book, The Gods Were Astronauts. By the way, I do not only deal with the Old Testament in this book. I have a full chapter which incredible stories came out from old India, from Sanskrit texts.
Yeah. I should certainly get it, Mr. Däniken, because I've just finished Signs of the Gods, actually.
Chariots of the Gods, but that's
No,
an old...
Signs of the Gods.
Oh, Signs of the Gods.
Yep.
That's a wonderful picture book with fantastic pictures about Nazca.
All your books are excellent, and thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very
much indeed, Gordon. We've got to take another break. If you'd like to have a chance of winning Erick Von Däniken's new book, which is called The Gods Were Astronauts, published by Chrysalis, out at the moment, then all you need to do is text the word books to 8998, along with the answer to this question, what does UFO stand for? It'll cost you 50p. If you want to find out more about terms and conditions, just check the website at talksport.net. Back after this.
If you like to dance, then have we got the music collection for you. Sister Sledge, Gloria Gaynor, Kool and the Gang. This is Time Life's 70s soul, disco and dance. Hour after hour of feel-good, smash hit, dance classics. 6 CDs, plus the fantastic bonus CD, Party Party, absolutely free when you use your credit card. That's 7 CDs, 108 blockbuster tracks, all for just $39.96.
Boy, you turn me.
Call 0800 22 88 66 now. Remember, this collection is not in any shop and is only available by calling 0800 22 88 66. And if it's not the best soul, disco and dance collection you've ever heard, just send it back within 30 days for a full refund. So don't wait. Call 0800 22 88 66 now. Use your credit card and you also get the fantastic bonus CD Party Party absolutely free. So call 0800 22 88 66 now and get this ultimate party collection of the 70s. That's 0800 22 88 66. At $4.99 for postage and packing and allow 14 days for delivery.
Why do we say mustn't grumble, even if we fall or stumble, even if we trip and tumble? We all just mumble, mustn't grumble. If you've suffered an accident or injury, you could be entitled to compensation. So stop mumbling and start grumbling. Call local claims specialist Buchanan Ward & Co. 08000 632 632. From trips and slips to tumbles and stumbles, Buchanan Ward & Co. will pursue your claim with no win, no fee and no hidden extra costs. Buchanan Ward & Co. 08000 632 632.
The UK's best talk radio station, 1089 and 1053 AM. Talk Sport.
Okay, not much time to go now, so let's get to the calls. And before we do that, let me remind you that Erick's website is in English, not just in German. If you want to go to www.daniken.com, you can go to the English language website there, and you can find out all about Erick's books. And there's a link, as he said before, to the Mysteries of the World theme park, which is under construction now in the Interlaken in Switzerland. Craig in Hinckley in Leicestershire, you're on the air through to Erick.
Hi, James. Hi, Erick.
Hello.
As I say, it's a pleasure to talk to you. I've got two questions that I would like your advice on. One is, I have been into UFOs and aliens for a long, long time, and I do find your books very
thought-provoking. Is the word you're looking for?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. The questions that I have, I used to have my own UFO society in the local area. And the amount of UFO sightings, okay, they say that between 80 and 90% of them can be sort of moved on to actually things that are possible, like aeroplanes and helicopters and all that sort of stuff. But the other 20% or 10% that are basically unidentified objects are... there are so many different shapes. Now, I've always been a bit sort of confused that if the distance that the aliens have got to travel is so vast, how come they're using so many different types of spaceships?
No, look, there is somewhere a mother spaceship, and no human has seen this mother spaceship circling around the Earth or the Moon or whatever. And out of this mother spaceship, smaller vehicles come. And these smaller vehicles, the old Indian called them vimanas, they have different shapes. In Indian literature, old Indian literature, you have 22 different types of vimanas. Some of them look like the shape of an egg, other of them look like the shape of a flying saucer of today, others again have the shape of a cigar, and so on. That's in antiquity, not in present time. So I am not confused with the different shape, because we have different satellites, for example. We have satellites today who surrounded Mars. We had Mars Surveyor satellite. We had satellites who went out of our solar system. We have satellites, special probes to photograph Jupiter. And these satellites have different shapes because they have different goals, different things to do. The same thing with the so-called UFOs.
Okay. Craig, thank you very much indeed. We've got to move on because we're going to run out of time any moment now. Dean is in Hull in Yorkshire. Hi, Dean.
Hello. Yes, thanks for having me on the show. Since, Mr. Däniken, since reading your book, Chariots of the Gods, that's changed, not my religion, but my thinking. Now, I think I call myself an agnostic now. I don't really know what to believe in.
At least you're thinking. That's the main thing, Dean.
Yeah, that's right. And then I took a passing interest in Egypt and the pyramids and things like that. And then a few years ago, a program started on telly called Stargate. Have you ever seen that one?
The program with the
Stargate,
robot?
Stargate, yeah.
Of course I know Stargate.
Yeah. Can you tell me if that is loosely based on what you believe in? Because it is me.
Well, when the first Stargate, the movie, it was first the movie, came to the cinemas, it started with the scene where a young archaeologist is giving a speech in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. And there he says that they have no conclusive proof that Cheops was the builder of the Great Pyramid, and so on. More and more listeners leave the auditorium. And this was made by Roland Emmerich, the regisseur. So I phoned Roland Emmerich and said, listen, you must have read Erick Von Däniken very well, because the whole sequence of this speech in the museum was stolen out of my book, The Eyes of the Sphinx. And he was laughing and said, that's true. I read your book since I was 12 years old. So, of course, I know Stargate. Some of the ideas are wonderful, others are too exaggerated.
Okay. Dean, thank you very much indeed. I'm afraid we've come to the end of our time. Erick, what can I say? It's been a pleasure to spend an hour with you. I hope perhaps in the future you'll come back and do it again. This theme park sounds fascinating. I'm sure it's going to be advertised heavily over here. This, of course, is the right place to advertise it when you're thinking about placing advertising.
It would be a pleasure for me to be back.
Erick, and we'll look forward to it. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Erick's website is available at www.daniken.com. We'll be back in the next hour of the show, the final hour of the show, tell you about something special happening here on Monday night, and back to calls probably about the fire strike. Let's have a listen in the news, see if anything's happened.